And let's do the rest. I'm being gentle. We're being gentle, okay? And there they are, okay? They're beautiful. So I've got everything I need for my salad done. And it's time to work my magic with the potatoes here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to drain the potatoes first. I'm going to use the lid here, and we're going to drain them right into the sink. I've got a little bit of peel in there from the last item, from that sweet potato. Here I go. I'm holding on the lid, and I'm going to drain potatoes. If you're wearing glasses, well, I feel your pain. And I'm pouring out all that liquid. Oh, you guys can't see that. Worth a darn. But trust me, we just poured out all the liquid. And I'm moving things over to the closer side here. And I think before I get into these potatoes, let's check out that duck again, okay? I'm going to turn the potatoes low again. We can't let these guys get cold, okay? They're nice and hot. And what I did was I just turned a low flame under them, okay? 3 out of 10 right now, and I want to dry out any moisture that's present in there. While that starts, I'm going to pull out my duck, and let's take a look at it. We'll give it another baste. Out comes the duck. And I'm going to give it another little baste over here. Sorry, guys. The color on that is outstanding. I had a little tear in the skin. For those of you that saw this morning's class, you can't see that tear at all anymore because I did a little bicycle patch on it. The outer skin here is crisping up on the edges. It's beautiful. Oh, yes, that is duck crackling right there. Oh, yeah, this is just going beautifully. I'm just going to give it a little touch. It's not even done yet, okay? It's got another 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes to go here. So let me throw it on back in, and let me kind of bring this a little closer to you. I don't know how close we can get here, but you can see again, duck bones. They're browning up. They're looking beautiful. Everything's going in. Oops. It's beautiful. It's marvelous. It's magical. You better believe it. Okay, so what I've got here is potatoes on the fire, and I just turned on a little bit of heat, about 3 out of 10 underneath them. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start working in, or just start working the moisture out of them. Here's my masher, and I'm really not going to get too active with my masher at this point. I'm just going to go in and kind of turn the potatoes over and break them up slightly, again, just to kind of release some of the steam out of them. I want these dry and mealy. Think the inside of baked potato. There's a flame under there. We're cooking the water out of this potato starch. I'm going to turn it up. I'm 4 out of 10 right now. I'm going to have one of these on hand too, a little spatula. Oh yeah. And notice again, I'm not using milk. I'm not using cream or anything. I've got butter, and I think I mentioned to you guys that I have a little bit of yogurt that I want to use up in there. So there's about 1 ounce of yogurt that's just going to be gone here in a minute. I'll work the yogurt in kind of near the end. Okay, and I'm going to release a little bit more steam. And these are looking pretty dry. I don't know if you can see a little bit of steam coming out of those guys. And I'm really not trying to work these potatoes right now. Every time I turn them over, you see a big cloud of steam coming out. That's all I'm trying to do is dry them out. I said it earlier, the drier I can get them, the more cream and butter and bad stuff I can fit in them. Get water out, fat in. If anybody is familiar with a chef called Joël Robuchon, who had a famous mashed potato, it was basically just butter and potato. He used a special kind of potato. And the trick with that is, you'll see a lot of chefs melting their butter ahead of time. But if you think about it, it should be more like finishing a sauce with butter. A lot of chefs know what I'm talking about when we finish a sauce with butter. I'm working butter into these mashed potatoes like I'm finishing a sauce. I have whole butter here. I didn't melt it ahead of time. It's going to work in there like I'm finishing a sauce, and it's going to mount into the potatoes. If you pre-melt your butter, you're going to get oily looking potatoes. If you mount the butter into it, it's going to emulsify into it, and it's going to be just like one of those pan sauces that you do. Okay, my flame is still on underneath here. I got to stay on top of it, and we are drying it out. And let me just say, Food Network never tells you this about this step, okay? I'm going to turn my flame pretty much all the way down. That step of drying things out, getting the moisture out. Nobody ever talked about that. Now that I've got that kind of dried out, I'm going to go ahead and start adding butter. And boy, my kitchen is hot. I usually like my butter a little firmer than this. This is pretty soft. But it's going in, and I'm going to work it in really fast. And I am turning off the fire all the way, by the way. And I can get in there and mash too. Use the mashing motion, and give it a little hit from time to time. Stir it around, and I'm going to go for some more of that butter. Man, it's awesome. A little more butter, working it in. Again, this is a little softer than I like to work with it. I want that butter to work in slowly, but I'm not getting a shiny, oily appearance to this. The butter is working itself in because we're mounting it in. We're not melting it and then pouring it in. I never understood that. These are a little rustic, if you will. Rustic, okay? You're going to see a few little lumps, so I didn't call them potato puree. If we send these through a food mill and get perfectly clean potatoes, we peel them, of course, and all of that. Send them through a food mill, we'll call that potato puree, and you can use that for other applications in the kitchen. Culinary school, whoa, I'm a little off kilter. Culinary school doesn't teach mashed potatoes. We teach potato puree, and that's just pureed potato. And with that pureed potato, I can make mashed potatoes by working in butter, cream, bad stuff like that, right? Cheddar cheese, chive, bacon, right? Whatever I want to do. I can take that puree, add a little egg to it, and cheddar and bacon and all that stuff, and make croquettes out of it, or I can bake it off, or I can pipe it out and bake that, and it'll bake and hold its shape because it's got egg in it. I can take that potato puree, thicken soups with it, right? It's just pureed potato. That's like step one that we teach in culinary school. And then that is a technique that springboards into all these other things that we do in the kitchen, right? And so normally for potato puree, we would use a food mill and really puree every single thing out of it so that it's this perfect puree. And for your home use, I just use, a grandma masher, okay? It looks beautiful. I'm going to work some more butter into it. I'm using pretty much a whole cube of butter in with this 3 potatoes here. It's pretty deadly, and this is very reminiscent of those Robuchon potatoes I was talking about. Even though these have sweet potato in them and all that stuff, it's that idea of just mounting the butter in. You can see the potatoes almost getting a little flow to it. I'm going to work in the rest of this butter, and I'm going to work that yogurt in too. And then we're going to start working on some flavor here. I want to, ooh, buttery. I'm not on the fire. I do want to reinforce that. I'm done with the masher. I'm going to switch to a rubber spatula to work in the rest of this butter and the seasoning. Now, I haven't added any salt to this at all, so I'm going to go ahead and start by adding a little salt. I'm going to crack in some very, very fine black pepper to this one. It's going with that duck, and that black pepper is nice with duck. That's classic flavor with duck. So super, super fine, super fine. And I stop, and I'll kind of tighten that up and do a little more. Boom. And then a little bit of nutmeg. I got my fresh nutmeg here. I could take these mashed potatoes in another direction. This is kind of the standard I've been kind of showing you guys, because this is like 3-4 ingredients that I can show you very, very easily. Salt, pepper, nutmeg, butter, and potatoes. That's all that's in this. Hey, I threw a sweet potato in there. I don't count that as another ingredient. It's just another type of potato. I'm working a bunch of that nutmeg in there. Doing duck. Hey, cinnamon would be good in this. Duck and cinnamon is awesome. The the sweet potatoes would pick up the cinnamon flavor, but I'm just going to go kind of plain here. 5 ingredients. Look at that, by the way. Little bits of, there is that skin in there, but it's not huge old chunks of skin. These are biteable pieces. Oh, by the way, I wanted to use up that last little bit of yogurt. There it is. Boy, you can't see in that glare. There it goes. Hold that guy in. Just to use it. And that's working protein into the dish, right? If you're a vegetarian, you're looking for ways to add protein to things. Hey, a little yogurt in there. Okay, and I've almost got it worked in. Okay, excellent. Right, so right now, I'm thinking that duck needs a little more cooking time for this, okay? So I'm thinking timing. These potatoes are done. I'm going to put a lid on them, and we are just going to let those kind of chill on a back burner, kind of where it's warm. It's right next to where the oven vent is coming out the front, so those will stay nice and warm. And what I've got on the stove right now that I haven't discussed yet is a little bit of stock, and I could kind of show you a little, you know, I wanted to kind of work with some gravy dynamics here a little bit, okay? And so I'm going to go ahead, let's pull out this duck, and what I'm going to do, oh, I've got to go over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put that duck on just a platter and keep it roasting, and we'll kind of start taking a look at some gravy dynamics, if you will, okay? So let's do that. Let's see, gravy. I think I will use a little bit of flour for this gravy. I just actually decided to do this. So there's a little flour. And I just need a little spoonful of flour in this. So let me see. This right here. So what I will do is I'm going to pull the duck off and just keep it going in this pan. We call this sort of a situation a sizzle platter in the restaurants, where I got to work on a sauce, but I got to keep cooking the item that the sauce is going with, okay? So let me pull out our duck. We're bringing it on home. Our potatoes done, our salad is essentially done. I just got to bring this duck home. We'll be done in about 10 minutes here, maybe. Okay, so I'm going to baste that duck a little bit with my fat. There she is. I'm going to add a little fat to the pan. Whoop, whoop. And I'm going to go ahead and move it over. Move it on over. And that is going to ride along in the oven. It's going straight back into the oven to keep cooking. Because I want to work on some gravy here, okay? Now, I'm going to save all of these bones for another purpose, and I'm just going to use the drippings in the bottom of this pan for my gravy. That's what I want to show you. So here goes all of the bone pieces. There's a ton of drippings in there that I will show you in one moment. I'm going to leave the onion in there. Little bits of flavor. All of this stuff, these bones, I'm going to keep for another preparation. I'm going to make a stock. I want to make a brown stock out of this. But with all of this deliciousness in the pan here, I can make a gravy. So let me show you that, what I have here. What you see is fat, but you also see a darker brown liquid underneath, and that is deliciousness. That's the duck juice that's down there. And what I want to do is I want to simmer that juice until it like loses all of its moisture and it sticks to the pan. Then I'm going to pour off that duck fat, and then I'm going to make a little sauce in there by sprinkling a little flour and adding a little bit of stock. And then you're going to see all of that flavor that's stuck to the pan is going to melt into it and give me a beautiful sauce here, okay? So this is Gravy 101, and it's not like I really want to eat gravy, but I kind of wanted to show you how a gravy works since we're roasting. Gravies are typically a byproduct of the roasting process. And let's drink to that, shall we? Gravies, a byproduct of the roasting process. Yeah, rah, rah, yeah. And there it is. So what I'm going to do, first step here is called clarifying the fat. I'm going to simmer the moisture out of that brown liquid in the bottom. So I turn on the heat. Ouch. turn on the heat. I think I got to back off. It was getting a little hot for my unit there. And what I'm doing is simmering out the liquid here. It's going to start snap, crackling, and popping. On the side, I'm going to get a little spoonful of flour, and I'm going to drizzle that in once we clean this fat. So again, this step is called clarifying the fat. I'm just kind of cleaning up in between steps here. Working with my OCD issue, trying to work through them. Yes, yes. I got a spatula back. Those are nice to have. And I'm just going to kind of swirl that around. And it's still bubbling. That means there's still liquid present. Let's see who's out there. Roberta's out there. Oh, Mr. Ozzy. Duck is there. Duck is Ozzy's favorite, in case anybody didn't know. Miss Diana's still out there. I'm loving it. I'm loving it, guys. Beautiful. We'll keep on rolling. I'm still clarifying the fat here. I'm trying to cook the moisture out of that pan. And you can see all of the brown is sticking to the bottom of the pan now. That's what I'm looking for. We're going to pull out some of this fat here in a sec. Where's my fat? So I'm going to save some of my duck fat here. And I've got a little setup to do just that. When I clarify the fat, the liquid is going to stay in this pan, hopefully. It's going to stick to those onions. You can see the onions are browning. Come on, fat. Do, 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 do. La, la, la. Getting a little sip of wine here again. This really, really messes up your area of operations. It's getting awful speckled out there. We're super close, guys. The little brown bits are all kind of concentrating. Our fat is getting clarified, and we're getting ready to strain it. And so I'm going to just start pouring this out. I got to get going on this. Ideally, I would wait for a little longer. But right now, I'm just trying to pour the fat only and leaving the brown bits behind. All of the tasty brown bits. Oh, yeah. And by the way, all those little tasty brown bits, that's like bouillon cube. It's concentrated duck. Duck concentrate, if you can handle it. I'm going to turn the flame way down, and I'm going to take all of that business and toss it right back in there, because that's flavor. That's flavor right there, okay? So the next step now is I'm going to take a little bit of fat and I'm going to saunger it in there. This is my favorite word. I say that all the time. My favorite culinary term. I'm going to take a little bit of fat. Flour. There's a little bit of fat in the pan, and I'm going to sprinkle a little flour in there. And this is going to make what some of you might know as a roux. Flour and fat cooked together, used for thickening liquids. Roux, R-O-U-X. Flour and fat together, cooked together, used for thickening liquid. So there's not enough fat left in that pan right now. So I'm going to add a little more oil back in, and we're going to cook this roux out just for a minute. This is gravy making 101 right here. Gravy is a product of the roasting process. Here goes a little more fat. I just needed a little more in there. And it's that duck fat. It's got lots of flavor. There's a little bacon in there too. And right now, I am cooking that flour and fat together. The starch granules in that flour are being permeated with fat. And that fat is going to be the vehicle that carries the starch granules into the liquid, or vice versa. Vice versa. So right now, it's really ugly in that pan. Something I always told my students, the ugliest one wins, okay? Sometimes we want ugly in there because that's how we get the flavor out of it, okay? So ugly pan is not a bad thing. I'm going to give that another stir. There's a little bit of the roux on there, and I'm going to let that cook. This isn't going to make very much gravy. I'm going to pull out my duck. Pull out the duck. And that guy's done. I can just feel him. The duck is beautiful, by the way. Look at the color. I told you it would develop more color. Look at that. Can you believe that? Okay, it's kind of dry looking, so we shine it up. Let's make it even more sexy here. Let's do this. God, my cutting board looks horrible. Well, let's shine that up and then show it to you. That's even sexier. And it's got a bunch of beautiful stuff in the bottom here too. There's flavor down there. Look in the bottom of this pan. You see that dark black in there? I'm throwing that in the gravy. You better believe it, right? But look at that. I shined it up. That is beautiful duck. Canard farci, stuffed duck. Canard farci. Okay, so I have been cooking this roux out for a little bit. Usually with gravies, we don't do a long roux cook time. I'm going to switch to a wooden spoon, okay? I'm going to kind of scrape all of that off. I'm going to turn off my heat, and I'm going to work in just a little bit of a stock that I had around. It's just a little chickeny stock here. Very appropriate for my duck. And I'm going to be using these duck bones to make another stock in turn. So I just added a tiny bit of liquid, just enough for what I got. There's no fire under there to speak of. And I want to incorporate the roux thoroughly before I turn a fire onto this thing. If this is thick, I will go ahead and add a little more liquid to it. And I think it's already thick. And there it is. Yeah. You see those onions floating around in there? Gravy 101, that's how you make a gravy. Remember, clarify the fat is the big secret there. Another one, they really don't talk about stuff like that on the food TV, you know? Who's ever heard clarifying the fat before? Now, all those little brown bits, as this simmers, those little brown bits in there are going to melt, and this whole thing's going to turn darker. It's a beautiful thing. I'm going to throw in some more thyme. I have a thyme sprig right there, so that's going to ride along with it. I'm also going to throw in, I found my bay leaves. So I'm going to throw in a little bay leaf here. I'm going to kick in a bunch of black pepper. And we're going to have us a gravy here in a minute. My roast over here is resting. It's almost time for dinner. I'm turning up my heat now on this gravy. We're still thickening this liquid. I haven't gotten there yet. As this gets hotter, it's going to get thicker. I'm going to wipe as I talk. So I don't know how thick this is until it hits a boil, and that's kind of a thing that I say to students quite a lot. We got to get it all the way to a boil. I'm starting to get where I can hold that handle now. It was in the oven all this time. And I'm going to turn up that heat again. I want to get this all the way to a boil. I can tell that it's going to be pretty thick. Here goes some. Here goes a little bit of my pepper. I'm running low on pepper in there. Hello, hello. I'm finally hitting a boil over in the corner. And it's too thick. It's already thicker than I like, so as soon as I see that, I'm going to thin it out. Boop. I like a thin gravy, a jus. And there it is. It's starting to melt all of those little brown bits. It's turning darker. And let's see, I got the bay leaf in there. I got the thyme in there, black pepper. It's really all I got going on. I had a little roasted onion, and I had all of that turkey business in there, right? Or turkey, duck. We're doing duck. Keep telling myself, right? Now, there's a little bit of flavor in that other pan that I was using. Remember the duck pan over there? So I'm going to kind of place the duck on a plate. And I'm going to take all of that liquid too that came out of the duck. There's a little bit of juice there. And I'm going to go ahead and melt that with some more liquid. You see the brown in there. And I'm going to work that into it too. That is all flavor. And that's going in my gravy too. You kidding me? You think I'm going to throw all that away? Come on. Come on. There we go. I'm just going to let that cool over here. And we are simmering this kind of aggressively to kind of cook out that starch that I added, that floury starch in there. I'm really liking, check out the flow on this, by the way, guys. I'm really liking that. It's thin. I hate gloppy gravy, like most country gravy you see. Guys, I want it to flow, man. I really, really do. Last thing I want to do, I'm going to take some of my, instead of using salt, I'm going to take some of that seasoned salt I made. It had that sage in it and all of that stuff. I'm going to kind of work that in as well. So this is my salt. And there's just a little extra background flavor in there. I have not tasted this or anything. I have not added salt to it. We're about to go ahead and find out what this tastes like right now. Let me just simmer that for one more second. And yeah, all of the dark on those onions, everything is giving me a darker sauce. The gravy gets darker as it sits. Look at the duck, guys. Isn't she lovely? Look at that. It is beautiful, okay? I'm just going to gloss it up with a little bit more oil just to make it even more sexy looking. Look at that. Are you kidding me? That is gorgeous, okay? In a second, I guess while this gravy simmers off, I think I'm going to start cutting the string off of this. And let me just kind of say, I had to talk to my assistant, Kevin. And okay, so while this is simmering a little bit here, I might thin that again. It's getting a little thick on me. I'm going to go ahead and take some scissors and snip all of these strings off. I'm going to turn it over for a sec and do this on the back side. And you can see me just kind of hitting every one of those strings. And again, the seam for this is along the bottom. This is really sticky. Duck is gelatinous and rich. So I'm going to open this up. It's kind of on that end. Those nubby bits on the end are beautiful. By the way, this string has a little boost of flavor in it too. Should I go ahead and just throw that in my sauce? There's a little nub at the end that I want. Look at that little piece at the end. And make sure that we get all of the string. It is a serious, serious faux pas to leave any string on. So there is my duck. It's so gorgeous, so gorgeous. One of the reasons I wanted to do this so simply, right? It's just salt and pepper for the most part on this thing. I really wanted to taste the duck. It is so gelatinous and so just natural umami. It is just so good right now. I really kept this thing simple and I'm very, very excited about it. My gravy is coming along. I'm going to do another little adjustment on it. It looks like it has thickened up on me. So I'm going to add a little more stock. That's the end of my stock. And we're going to strain that out. I have to taste it. I haven't tasted this yet. I gotta say, that's pretty darn delicious. I think, if anything, I'm gonna put a little more black pepper in there. I like a little black peppery afterburn, if you will. Oh gosh, come on. Here we go. It's working. Yeah, it's working. This is so good. Oh yeah. All right, I am not slicing that yet. I need to finish my salad and I need to get dishes ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and plate this in my ramen bowl. I think it's about the coolest thing I have to plate with. Sorry, folks. You guys probably get a little tired of seeing it. I am going to strain my sauce into a little pot. I think I'll get a bigger pot. Oh gosh, that's the pot I want. Oh, this is going to be good. I like this. Okay, so sauce straining is happening now. I've got my little strainer, I've got my little sauce, and it's all going in. It's all going in. It's a beautiful thing. It smells like the Colonel, I gotta say. I have that sage seasoning in there. And we are going to finish straining this the rest of the way. And tapping is very common in the biz. Every once in a while, I'll do one of those. Tap, 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 and that liquid just flows right on through. Oh yeah, I am very, very happy with this gravy. I wouldn't mind it being a little darker, I would say, but smoothie, silk, and I love that consistency. You don't know how thick something is until you run a spoon through it. Look at that, it's beautiful. I'm gonna get rid of this, and I got myself a gravy. I got myself a mashed potato. I've got myself a duck. I gotta finish my little veggie slaw that I'm doing here. So let's do that. I've got peas, I've got radishes, I've got red onion. I'm adding red bell pepper that I had, quarantine kitchen. I'm adding a ton of cherries, cherries and duck, match made in heaven. A little bit of a spicy radish to kind of break up some of the fat in this dish. And gosh, I don't think I reserved enough duck fat to drizzle in here, so I think I will just finish this with a little bit of an extra virgin olive oil. Let me grab that. Where did I put my EVO? Instead of duck fat, which would have been unbelievable. I'm going to do a little bit of this EVO. Super simple, guys. You saw me put it all together. Just a little drop of that. Fat is very important. You don't have much flavor in there without the fat. A little bit of pepper. I don't need much pepper here. I've got those peppery radish greens in there. And the star of the show, I've got a pretty decent balsamic vinegar that's going on there. Oh, come on. Oh, no. My cork broke. Bummer. Bummer. I got a different balsamic I'm going to use. This is freaking me out. My OCD just kicked in. My cork just fell inside, and well, that's gross. I got another balsamic. Yeah, people like me, we just got balsamic laying around. Crazy. Is that it? That's it. This is actually it's a Cisco brand, but it's actually a very decent balsamic. And I'm just going to drizzle that over here. Again, sweet and sour going with the rest of this. I don't want to shake up this vinegar bottle, by the way. It has sediment in the bottom. So I just drizzled a ton of that on there. I'm going to give this a little toss, and I'm just going to let the ingredients pretty much speak for themselves in this half of it. That is just beautiful right there. Again, that balsamic vinegar kind of darkens the radishes and things like that, but it's still going to be a beautiful little presentation. I'm just going to give a little taste of a few of the flavors together. By the way, the peas are raw in there. They give it a nice grassiness. It's kind of different. Just a little pinch of salt to make it a little salty sweet. You know, it's going to be a little more appealing with that. Try that again. I'm going to give another taste. Again, the fat was definitely necessary in there. One more try. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Let me go ahead and plate this baby. It's not garnishes and stuff. Very, very simple food. By the way, there is my radish, cherry, and radish salad. It had radish greens and radishes, right? Radish two ways. All right, so here's the plate I want to use. Let me wipe down here a little bit. I'm going to put a small dollop of the mashed potato in there. I may have to kind of adjust this, but it might. I'm hoping it's still fairly soft because I was using just straight fat. That butter shouldn't have set up too much. And yeah, it's totally soft still, right? It didn't set up like cement. So I'm just going to put in about a spoonful or two of that in the bottom. Slightly offset. As always, chefs do that, don't they? I want more of those. I'm going to hit it with a tiny bit of gravy in the bottom. So here's my gravy, and we tried that. And I'm just going to pour that right in the bottom there. Maybe a tiny bit more. I need enough sauce for every bite. I'm going to clean that. I'm going to go ahead and slice a few pieces of my duck. Finally slicing it. By the way, there's juice on there. That's going in my gravy. You better believe it. Drip, drip, drip. This is going to be so good. Let's see. For slicing this guy, I'm going to use my long, thin blade, my long, thin slicing knife. And I'm going to go ahead and go from one end here, and I'm not going to serve the guest the end piece. I'm pulling that off. You can see the sausage in there. Look how juicy that is. Anybody think I'm serving dry food to anybody? Look how juicy and delicious that looks, right? It's just beautiful. Where is it? There it is. I take off that little end piece, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut a couple of slices. I think I'll just do 2. And by the way, let me just point out, the idea here is you see the skin, you see that duck breast meat on the outside. It's a pretty even layer. And then your sausage, your force meat or farce, my mushroom filling, is centered in there. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm going to do another little slice here. And I'm going to lay those on down. And then finally, I'm just going to dredge a little bit, dredge if that's the word, kind of drop a little bit of my relish over the top, and my plate's done. Kind of in the front and spilling off towards the back. I don't want to cover up all of the delicate work that I did, so I'm going to kind of knock a few of these pieces over a little bit so I can kind of see that my force meat is centered in the meat. I'm still showing off that beautiful golden brown skin there. I've got color breaks going in here and kind of a nice flow going with the dish. And the ramen bowl, by gosh, it gives it height, okay? So that is my plate, and I'm sticking by it. We're gonna be eating that for dinner here, but the rest of you guys are gonna be tuning in to me on Wednesday because I am speaking to the great, the incomparable Bill No of Crew, okay? He has agreed to talk to me on my fake little TV show. I can't believe it. And we are just gonna have a conversation. I'm kind of curious about how he got the whole thing started, how the empire started. I also wanna know, sorry, I just realized my oven's on. I also kind of want to know how he's reacting during COVID. That's kind of the old story. Everybody I'm talking to, that's what I want to know. I mean, how are we dealing with the new reality? And what do you think the world's going to look like after this? And all of that stuff, okay? So that's going to be on Wednesday at 5 o'clock. I'm going to be interviewing Bill No of Crew. I'm so stoked about this, and we shall see the rest of you on the flip side. Don't forget to get over to my YouTube channel, Industry Cooking Classes, and subscribe, and enjoy yourselves with these cooking videos, guys. None of this is pressure. You don't see me measuring anything. There's no rocket science here. It's just cooking, guys, and you can just take one tiny little piece of this and apply it to some other recipe in the kitchen or some other preparation you're doing or whatever. That makes me feel good, right? It isn't about the dish that I'm making today. It ain't about this duck dish, right? This is about cooking technique and how many different techniques we had. You saw pureed potato. You saw thickening liquids. You saw gravy making techniques today. You saw me bone out a whole duck and make a force meat out of the legs and roll it up the middle of this thing. And you saw me tie it all into a ballotine. And then you saw me make a tasty little side that didn't really have much work going on in it, actually. You know, hey, I can't make everything soigné. You know, I'm a one-man show, right? So again, guys, keep watching the stars, and keep tuning in, guys. I really love doing this with you, and I hope you are getting a little something out of it, okay? And finally, the last thing, don't ever forget, guys, the party is always in the kitchen. That's why I'm doing this. And with that, we are going to sign it on off. Take care, everybody, and thanks for another great Quarantine Kitchen Monday. We'll see you next time. And there she goes. Boom. And